Esther, if we might start with you, what exactly do these numbers tell us about the state of diversity in corporate America, especially when it comes to the executive ranks and the board ranks?
Thank you, Don. It's great to be here. Well, look, the first takeaway is the shockingly low number of Latinos on corporate boards. But let's get to some of the other takeaways. So, first, corporate America is not capitalizing on the immense business case of having racial and ethnic leaders in roles that are driving business decisions. Did you know that $660 billion of unlocked talent and unlocked spend for Latinos is out there? The Latino consumption rate is growing at 6% annually, double the rate of the general population. So corporations without Latinos on the board are leaving money and perspective on the table. A second takeaway for me is there's ample talent. I would tell folks, seek out business networks like the Latino Corporate Directors Association. We bring together experienced directors as well as highly qualified executives for the boardroom that have the business acumen and to add value to your board.
Okay, Linda, those are some interesting points that are being brought up there. One of the issues that we have is exactly how we get people to some of those positions. It's not like there's a roadmap necessarily. There isn't a clear-cut blueprint as to how somebody with the talent or qualifications for being on a board actually gets to that board service level. What exactly do you think could be one of those, blueprints for how people of color can make inroads into some of those types of closed-door settings?
Well, thanks very much, and thanks for having me on. And I agree with everything that Esther just said. I think there's a lot of, untapped talent that's out there that's being left on the table. And I think definitely looking at various networks that are out there. I know that LCDA, or Latino Corporate Directors, is part of a diverse directors coalition in which there are lots of different corporate board members from diverse backgrounds that are, part of the network that could be tapped into. There are the networks like the Alliance for Board Diversity, which my organization, LEAP, as well as ELC and Hyter are part of, and we have networks of executives that are very well qualified to sit on these corporate boards. And I think these are opportunities that are being missed out there, and we're ready to help. And we're looking for opportunities to really help diversify these boards.
Linda, if I might follow up on that, is there a way, though, for people to get in touch more easily with pipeline organizations like that? Are there almost, I guess you could call them camps? Are there ways for people to go through programs to learn more about the types of offerings that there are, and perhaps even to learn a little bit more about how they can craft aspects of their career to become more attractive as board members in the future for whatever type of organization?
Yeah, that's a great question. I mean, there's definitely a lot of resources out there. I know Stanford and Harvard both have programs, as well as Ascend has Pinnacle has a director's leadership boot camp, I believe. But more importantly, I think you asked an important question. What should people be doing ahead of time? And I think, if you're not really thinking early enough about what you want from the future of your career, you may not be positioning yourself properly for a corporate board position and making it so that you're attractive to these corporate board recruiters, the board nom-gov chairs, perhaps even the the different search firms that are also helping to place board members onto boards. And so I think, for anybody who's watching right now and you're, let's say, mid-career or even starting out your career, as much as it may seem like it's a long way, start thinking about what it is that you're going to be doing that you think will help you to position. Get your mentors, get your sponsors out there, helping you to think through what it is that you should be being very intentional and strategic about in terms of the choices, the kind of skills that you acquire, and also building those relationships. And I think ultimately it does come down to relationships, Dom.
So relationships are very important in these kinds of situations. Mike Hyter, there have got to be qualities or certain aspects, things that people can look to towards their professional development that make them those attractive board candidates. I wonder, in your professional circles, in your professional experience, Mike, what exactly does constitute a good member of a board of directors, or somebody who can offer insights to a board, whether they be corporate or nonprofit? What exactly do they have to do in terms of best practices to make them the best possible board member that they can be?
Well, first of all, it's an absolute pleasure to be here as well. Thanks for the question. I think it's important just to sort of level set the fact that board director participation is basically, being a part of a strategic team that has fiduciary responsibility for oversight of an organization. And so what people who are interested in being on boards ought to be really clear about is developing a body of work in whatever profession they happen to be in, where they're recognized for global contribution at a very strategic and significant level. And a lot of times I've seen people who are interested in boards sort of focus most of their attention on wanting to celebrate the various jobs that they've accumulated as opposed to the contributions that they've made. Because boards typically are looking for people who are going to be adding significant value in helping the organization that happens to be a part of that board to grow. And so anything that one can do to demonstrate that they've made a significant difference in advancing the benefits of any organization they happen to be working in is a differentiator that people just need to be more focused around.
Sid, this brings up an interesting point about the types of contributions that can be made from people of color, from people of diverse backgrounds. One of the things that a lot of at least strategists at the corporate level have talked about is the idea that bringing diversity or bringing diverse viewpoints to the boardroom, to the executive ranks, is actually good for business. Can you take us through the types of issues that future board members will face in the coming years, given what we're seeing in the current business dynamic and how we're viewing the globalized economy, the way that things are shaping up right now?
Well, thank you, Dominic, and buenas tardes, mi gente. It's great to be here with all my esteemed colleagues. I love your question because one of the things that's so important to understand when you are serving on a corporate board, and I've experienced myself having served on corporate boards myself, is how do you make sure that you have an effective chief executive officer? It's one of the most important characteristics of a functioning board of directors. Secondly, is you are looking at the dynamics of what your competitor landscape is, how to make sure that you are improving your business and opportunities, and making sure that you do have those diverse perspectives. It's one of the reasons why we know that having diverse board directors, having people of color, and I want to say particularly having women of color on these boards will be able to provide those dynamics. But Dominic, here's the big challenge. The big challenge is that under today's corporate structure, it goes like this. Show me your resume, I'll show you a mid-level manager job. You show me your sponsorship, I'll show you the C-suite. You show me your credibility, and I'll show you a board seat. Because remember that it's not just skill set, it's not just experience, it's the wisdom of that experience, which comes from credibility, a function of your achievements multiplied by time, multiplied by visibility, equals your credibility. And so we know that corporate America must do a better job of acculturating to us, rather than asking people of color to assimilate to an existing corporate structure, which is why sometimes when you hear the complaint that people of color aren't always the right fit, qualifications, all these typical buzzwords that we hear, and that is common when you have an assimilation corporate structure. And so at Hyter, the Hispanic Association on Corporate Responsibility, we have been all over the country and all over the world. We just came back from the World Economic Forum just a few months ago, really making that case that corporations must acculturate, not ask us to assimilate, because we are proud people. When we come to a board, we bring our full, authentic selves, and when we do that, we can make that difference and make sure that that true business case can be realized.
You know, Esther, this is an interesting or at least curious balance that many potential board members, no matter who they are going to have to kind of walk, that kind of fine line. That is to say that they can bring some of those great, insightful, out-of-the-box thinking type, at least paradigms to corporate boardrooms, while at the same time doing so in a way that kind of builds a little bit on that collectiveness that boards often have. How hard is it to find that balance so that people of color, minorities, people from diverse backgrounds can make those contributions while at the same time do so in a way that gets people to feel like it's more team building rather than coming in and trying to bust things apart?
Absolutely, Dom. Thank you for the question. So, you know, in a boardroom, the role of directors is to ask smart questions and to probe so that they are providing and adding value to the company and shareholder value. And the bottom line is you bring your whole self, both your immense experience in corporate America, in industries and functional expertise, all of that business acumen that you were hired to the board to bring. And you can ask questions around how, again, new market opportunities. How is the company looking at new market opportunities that are here in our own backyard? Because you're asking it simply because you're a fiduciary of the company. It's your responsibility. Again, as I mentioned at the top, do not leave money on the table. So it's just a matter of asking smart questions about what are we doing about these markets and point to some key research. The data I cited was from the McKinsey report of the Latino economy and the state of Latinos in the economy in America. And so there's plenty of research that speaks to the value to the company. This is a value, and it's how you ask the question. So it's very doable. You bring both things, the value, bringing on directors that come from our various communities. You get multiple wins. That business acumen, that insight, both international, global, and you bring these other perspectives that others in the board may not, and asking some smart questions about possibly, where there are new markets. It's up to the executives to follow up and report back.
Now, Linda, those points are well taken, but they also provide a number of hurdles that a lot of folks, regardless of who they are, have to kind of overcome to kind of breach those boardroom doors and get hurt in those levels. What do you think in your mind would be the toughest thing for people of color, people of diverse backgrounds, women, people who are underrepresented in the boardroom to have to overcome to make them appear as though they are viable candidates for a corporate board?
I'll just say I think part of it is just being different. I think that let's look at it this way. I mean, it's human nature. I mean, they want to be with people that they feel comfortable with and that they feel like are like them. And I think that's one of the biggest challenges that I think both as women and also as people of color, and when you're the combination of both, that becomes even more difficult. We're assumed to be very different and that likely there's not going to be a whole lot of commonality. And I think that there's hesitation, especially I'm going to say in this kind of current environment that we're in. I think there's concerns about people, about what they say, how they say it. And I think they're really not looking at it in a way of how can I get to know people and how can I learn from this person, that they're a human being just like me and that our differences are probably much smaller than where our commonalities are, and the benefits that we'll gain as a board is going to be so much more greater. And I think that's going to become that is currently and still will continue to be one of the biggest challenges. And I think being able to then be intentional about searching for those people who come from different backgrounds, different perspectives, different styles, that is going to help drive a board to be even better, especially, I think, in a much more global environment. Even though I feel like there is more nationalistic tendencies now, I think, for a company to really thrive, you've got to really be able to understand and look, much more broadly. And I think that's where diverse board members are going to be extremely beneficial to, these large corporations, especially if they want to continue to thrive in an uncertain economic environment.
Speaking of that uncertain economic environment, that environment in the markets, everything else that's happened as of late, between a possible banking and financial crisis to a growth slowdown, possible recessions, not here in the U.S., but possibly abroad as well. Mike, I wonder, in your estimation, what exactly do corporate boards look like in, say, the next 2, 5, 10 years? What exactly do people have to do to make themselves the best possible board members they can be in the board of the future?
Well, I think, let me open with the point that I think one of the biggest misperceptions I believe that I've seen is the assumption that there's very little or few quality options of board candidates available that happen to be people of color or women, which is not true. And if you're focusing on skills and contribution in terms of expertise, as in mergers and acquisitions or technology or in cyber or in consumer products or financial services expertise, independent of whether you are a CEO or have a P&L responsibility, there is a lot of talent that's available to help organizations navigate through the complexities of the market that are coming, as you well articulated, Dominic. So, I mean, I'm hopeful that this market and the challenges are actually going to help accelerate the opportunity to looking at people who may not have traditionally been considered for board opportunities because of the expertise that they happen to offer that will help the organization grow and develop faster in the face of all of the uncertainty in the economy.
And Sid, to you here before we kind of conclude these kind of with these remarks, Sid, I wonder in your mind what exactly is the best quality that you could bring to a board if you are a person who is underrepresented. We've talked a lot about these are S&P 500 companies that we've referred these stats to, but not every board member is at the S&P 500 level. How do we kind of get that message out to smaller and medium-sized companies as well?
So Dominic, my answer is going to rattle some feathers because I'm going to share with you a big misconception. The big misconception is every white man serving on a Fortune 500 corporate board is qualified. The reality is, having been in this industry for 30 years, I think you and I can name many, many people who probably did not belong on that board, but got there because someone sponsored them on their board. Meanwhile, you have very, very qualified, very accomplished people of color that can serve on these boards. The big challenge is that in this current corporate environment, corporations will protect their corporate culture even if it's at the expense of business growth. I have example after example after example of when we see those examples, and we have to call companies out when they are not really leaning in towards creating that inclusive culture. Just some quick statistics, just so you know. 60% of all board directors tend to be CEOs or executives. 20% are those with strong finance experience. The last 20% is everybody else. 2/3 are chosen by word of mouth. 1/3 are chosen by search firms. The average age of your first board is 58. The average age of all board directors is 61. And so when you factor all those things in together, you can see where corporate America has yet to really adjust and amend and acculturate into our communities. And one last thing, Dominic, which is an area where at Hyter we have a very major concern, is that we think there is a sponsorship crisis. Often, if you're a white man, then you stay on what I call the power path. The power path are those positions that go into those C-suites that lead up to the CEO, CFO, COO, CMO, general counsel, etc. And too many people of color are being driven into what I call the cul-de-sac strategy, meaning that you go into a cul-de-sac position, maybe promoted into a cul-de-sac position, but then when it's time for you to move over into a power role, you either have to move down and then move back up, or in many cases, people leave. And at Hyter, we've done research on this, particularly for Latinas, and we're seeing this challenge that we're seeing. So corporate America needs to support power position, pipeline, diversity, and inclusion, so that way today we can have more than just 2 black women serving as Fortune 500 CEOs. We can have more than 1 Latina serving as a Fortune 500 CEO, but this is going to require a change in the culture on the board of directors and making sure that they are acculturating, not assimilating.